Hey guys, Kevin Bupp here, and I want to welcome you to another episode of the Real Estate Investing for Cash Flow podcast. Our mission is to help you build and maintain massive amounts of cash flow through income-producing real estate investments. Now, our guest for this week's show is a real estate investor, developer, and serial entrepreneur, Will Mercer. Now, Will's the founder and CEO of Umaya Village, a community of remote workers and teams nestled on a paradise beach in Belize. Prior to Umaya, is it Umaya? Am I messing this up?
Umaya, man, but it's
Umaya,
cool.
my
We can go with
God,
that.
I knew it when I started this. I'm going to start over again.
Oh no, we can, man. No, keep it rolling. It's fine.
That's funny. That's funny.
So prior to Umaya, yeah, there we are.
Will was a venture director at ZAG, the investment arm of global creative agency BBH. In this role, he led investments into 9 companies and oversaw a portfolio of 30 ventures, which doubled in value during his tenure. So with that, guys, it's my honor to welcome my guest for today's show, Will Mercer. Will, how you doing, my friend?
Yeah, man. Great to be here, and apologies for butting in on the introduction. That was
No, I told you I was going to butcher it. So anyway, that's funny. We literally talked about it before we started this, and I completely butchered it, even though you told me the exact pronunciation. So in any event, that's how it goes sometimes. So Will, we chatted a good bit about you, your background before we started the show here. But for our listeners that don't know you, they've never heard of you, maybe take a few minutes, tell us a little more about yourself, your background, and what it is you do.
Brilliant, thanks. So I guess at my heart, I'd probably describe myself as a community builder. I've started about 4 or 5 ventures, purely based around the idea of what you can achieve with a community. At the moment, Umaya Beach is probably the best example. Umaya Village, we live in a place called Umaya Beach, is probably the best example. And it really caters for this new demographic of remote workers, or digital nomads as they've become known. But prior to that, I cut my commercial teeth in banking. I was actually in restructuring during the financial crisis. So I came across some pretty messy property deals, and that was working out of London. I then moved into flexible workspace. I was head of strategy and COO of a multi-site co-working business in London. And then I sort of left from that to turn a chateau in rural France into a co-living space. Spoiler alert, it was a bit too early. And then I went from that to creating an ecosystem development consultancy. And it's a really, really strange term to basically say I would create communities of entrepreneurs, creatives, innovators that would help make or make large-scale real estate developments or cities really attractive to cool people, and thus make them habitable, I guess. So it's been a bit of a mixed bag, but I'd say at my heart, it's how do you get a group of really interesting people to a really interesting place and create a really thriving, vibrant environment?
So no, I appreciate that, and I'm going to back up a little bit because you'd mentioned working in finance and working to restructure distressed assets during the post 0809 crash. That is so very different in my mind. It's like a black and white, night and day difference from, what you did thereafter. I mean, and when I think of the folks that stuck it out in the finance world, that just, ground through the mess that was a result of 08 and 09, the financial crisis. I think of like the battered and beat up, bankers, and that you don't strike me as that, right? And what you did thereafter, again, it seems to be a complete night and day difference from the finance world. So
yeah, it was a bit of a curveball, and thank you. I think it's flattering. I never really did fit into straight finance, so yeah, I appreciate it. So one of the things about restructuring is you're dealing with a pretty cash tight situation, and You've got to answer yourself the question: if you're the banker, do I throw you good money after bad, and am I going to get a better result?
Yeah.
So often we found ourselves in situations where we were helping businesses with very little cash achieve results quick enough to attract capital. And following banking, I actually went into impact venture capital. I worked with an impact investment fund that was solely focused on investing in non-prime distressed areas or areas of high crime, with the whole idea of regenerative real estate. And one of the investments they've made was actually in an operating business, which was an adoption charity. And I kind of got moved into that as a turnaround ops director. And so when the opportunity to work in co-working came along, or flexible workspace, I effectively came in with a sort of financial kind of executive kind of hat, but I actually came into this co-working environment and for the first time ever, I saw these things that, everyone knows the startups, right? But startup ubiquity wasn't a thing, even 10 years ago. And when I saw all these startups, I saw loads of different businesses cohabiting a space and creating this beautiful community where they would support each other, help each other grow. Some would scale, some would collapse. We do, incubator programs for them or event programs that were specific. And it was just a really cool, creative sort of vibe about it. And then I started, when doing more the hands-on sort of incubator program or startup program space, I then started to see that with these businesses, you have capital-starved businesses that had no money, that had to convince people who are very just naturally skeptical to throw money after them. And so I saw that recurring pattern from real estate investment, distressed real estate investment through to, venture style investment. And often in venture, you really do have to take a very brutal axe to your product and just cut. And then when you've got the signal left, then just double down on that signal. So I think there was definitely a segue to it, but it wasn't so obvious at first.
Yeah. So speaking to co-working, I had mentioned before we jumped on here, I had a conversation with the founder of Liquid Space back in June of 2020. So he's a co-working directory, national director here in the U.S. Kind of one of the original innovators in the co-working space in the U.S. and just it was an interesting timing back in 2020 when no one really knew whether or not the world was going to end or what COVID was, what ultimately, what life looked like after COVID. And the conversation was interesting in that I personally had concerns, as generally speaking, about what the workplace looked like coming back, especially when you niche it down to co-working. Co-working is about community, right? Most co-working locations, they might have some standalone offices that are segregated from the rest. However, most have a very communicative type bullpen environment where folks are near each other, next to elbow to elbow, or very involved type scenario. And so again, with COVID, everyone's been freaked out over the past year and a half about the scenario that we find ourselves in. So I guess my question to you, which was my question to him, and now we're in different times, right? We can see that we're kind of moving towards a post-COVID world, and we're getting past it slowly but surely. Some areas faster than others. What are your thoughts on co-working? The future, the true future of co-working. Is it, is it gonna change? Is what we might have known it pre-COVID, or do you think it will get back to some type of normalcy, or is it already there now?
It's a really good question. So I think it really depends on the context, because one of the things about co-working, flexible workspace, is it started off as this sort of panacea to all problems, and then over time you started to see specialist propositions come out, either sector focused co-working or incubator startup spaces or consulting spaces, the corporate behemoth of WeWork and so on and so forth. But I'd say on the whole, what you see with large companies at the moment is a risk-averse appetite to employ an office space. No one's going to sign a lease, an 18. I'd love to see the data on average lease term as a result of COVID. Yeah. But what I would expect it to show is that no one's signing big leases anytime soon, which means that if I'm going back to work, and actually with the venture fund I work with, they exited their main office and went straight to flexible working. So I feel like I would expect that flexible workspace probably had a really brutal hit, and it then absorbed a lot of the capacity. If I'm a corporate real estate director in a large organization, I want to be exiting my leases as soon as possible. Anything that I don't own, I want to be leasing. I want to be exiting the lease. Anything I do own, I want to be leasing to flexible workspace providers. So I think now is probably a good time to be a flexible workspace provider versus a traditional sort of office space landlord.
So do you think would you be bullish in a sense that, do you think there's opportunity? We're speaking to, there's a mixed bag of our listeners, but a lot of them are commercial real estate investors, right? And surely there's probably opportunity, to purchase, maybe not fully distressed yet, but like somewhat discounted office, here in the US and probably other countries as well, right? I mean, everyone got impacted by COVID, and I think everyone's having the same challenges. And taking, a traditional office setting and, breaking it up into more executive style suites or
Mm.
a, hybrid type co-working environment. Do you think there's opportunity in doing that? Typically you can realize much higher per square foot rents in those
Mm.
types of scenarios versus that of a traditional office space. So do you feel that there could be opportunity there?
I definitely think so. I think one of the things to really pick up on as well is the migratory nature, the way
Mhm.
that COVID has really impacted, particularly in America more than anywhere else. I mean, in Europe, I can move elsewhere in Europe, but they don't speak English, right? So, or they will because, sort of very fortunately, a lot of Europeans are very well educated
Yeah.
and have a beautiful culture. But in America, it's I can move. I mean, like Boulder must be popping off right now. Florida has seen huge influx of people in COVID, and your more traditional centers, and the Bay Area where you're seeing insane rents. If I can reduce my cost base, why wouldn't I? And you're seeing companies like Facebook. I think they made an announcement that you can work from remotely, but you won't be able to attract a Bay Area salary if you do.
Yeah.
So what you're starting to see is the effects of redistribution of workforce or declustering.
Mhm.
If you look at it from an anthropological perspective, 1950s, 1960s, when America's manufacturing base was still, I mean, it is still huge, but it was really sort of the only place in the world that anyone was making anything, right? When, as you see over the last sort of 40, 50 years, the manufacturing base is declined. You've seen a lot of stuff being built in China,
Mhm.
and so when you have a manufacturing base, your real estate kind of serves the idea of a factory. And then what happened is we hit the information economy, which obviously America is the global leader in terms of consultancy services, technology, creative industries, etc. And those are industries where you really benefit from clustering in cities. If you want to make money, you go to a city and you hang out in a city, and urban populations start to drive up real estate, and you start to see such strong demand for particularly inner urban environment in terms of rental levels. And now what you're seeing is almost like a disaggregation of that. So I want a caveat to say there are definitely some times, but I would say that for a start, say the traditional co-working markets of your city centres might not be a good time to be a new entrant, but where you've seen a more lifestyle hungry segment of the American market moving to more pleasant environments.
Yeah.
That's probably there's probably a few things in your sort of mid-sized towns, small-sized cities that are great opportunities now to capture that transitory workforce.
Well, speaking to Umaya Village, I mean, your project there in Belize, have you seen an influx of folks coming from the U.S. and Europe? I mean, just basically moving away from maybe a less than desirable environment. Again, here in the U.S., the Northeast, the cold winters. We've had a major influx here in Florida, not just due to the weather, but also our policies and leadership here in the state, very different than that of maybe in New York. But I guess so. The question going back is, have you seen a change in migratory patterns of Umaya Village, and if so, what has that looked like over the past year and a half?
Yeah, really interesting. So I think my village was a product of the pandemic.
Oh, it was okay. So it's very recent. I
It was
mean,
very recent. So we were looking to do something similar, but when the pandemic hit, attitudes to remote working changed irreversibly forever. And I think that's the fundamental thing that people really need to understand, which is this isn't going away.
right.
Maybe there'll be hybrid, but we're seeing fully remote businesses. We're seeing partially remote businesses. We're finding corporates having to offer remote work as a perk because they're not able to retain talent.
Yeah.
So this is something that's not going to ever go. We opened our doors we had a test month in February and launched in March, and it's been full ever since. Like, we've not had a trouble filling. We had a bit of a lull due to another reason in September, but otherwise, what we've been able to sell, we've been really, really successful selling. And the main reason is, why would I pay Bay Area rent when I can sit next to a beach and effectively work from paradise? And it's not really a difficult sell at that point. yeah. So and I had to say, Belize has a big part to do with it. Its currency's pegged to the dollar. There are direct flights from 11 US cities. It's an English speaking country.
Yeah.
So definitely the US market. Europe less so, mainly because there was a transatlantic flight ban, which makes it's impossible to get to Belize without flying through the US. I mean, you can do it, but it's you have to go like 20 flights around. So we've almost exclusively seen Belize, American, US, and Canada out here.
So let's talk about my village, and where'd you start? You know, what I mean, how'd you get from idea to where you're at today?
That's a great question. So someone said to me once, you have to rehearse the future. So this is actually my second co-living space. My first was in a beautiful chateau in France, in Burgundy. And my business partner and co-founder, a guy called Jack Robinson, has a very successful marketing agency in London. So, and he also is an event promoter. So he puts on loads of music festivals around the world. So when the pandemic hit, I was already looking for a space because I knew that hotels were empty, and now was a good time to go find one. And through Jack, we got connected with my third co-founder, Daniel Thompson, who was working out here with some real estate developers, and one of which had an empty hotel. So it was one of these things that came together at lightning speed. I mean, we had a conversation in November, we signed the deal in December, the website went live on Boxing Day, the ads went live on the 5th of January, I was out here on the 6th of January, we opened our doors on the 1st of February, and then the 1st of March, wow. We've got, full house. Really lightning speed. It was one of these things where, we'd been looking for a way to execute the time. And I think that comes from the fact that, I'm very comfortable operating co-living spaces, and Jack is very comfortable doing marketing and running campaigns that will get people out to a location. And Dan was very comfortable being on the ground here in Belize and understanding how the country operated.
Very interesting. Wow, that really did come together fast. So help us understand the mechanics of the finance side of things, right? Actually, I'm assuming you guys bought the hotel. Is that an accurate statement?
We're operating.
Okay,
we're operating in partnership.
So you stepped in, okay, with the existing owner of the hotel.
Yes.
Okay, so basically, your sales pitch to them was basically they have zero revenue at that point in time. You had an idea, concept that could ultimately fill the place back up. Help them, continue to generate revenue and ultimately allow you guys to execute on this beautiful business plan. I mean, is that?
It's pretty much it. So to put it into context, Belize 2021 January tourism was 5% of its 2019. So
it was what? How much?
5% of its in terms of gross tourism. Yeah, it was absolutely decimated. And Belize basically has two major exports: fresh produce, mainly citrus and bananas, and tourism. And tourism being a larger part of the economy. So, and Belize is blessed with some amazing resorts. So we stepped up to we connected with the owner of one. He was keen to open up the resort, and as a result, we got connected with him and effectively ran it as a sort of almost like a partnership with some cash going our way and some cash going his way. So the mechanics were really simple, and that was the way that we were able to deploy. However, moving forwards, we're the I'd say the aspiration of the business, which we can go to in a second, is very much around ownership and construction. Mm-hmm. And one of the things about Belize is rates have been depressed for the last 12 months. It's a great time to visit. To anyone who's out there, I'd strongly recommend it. But in the long term, resorts out here can get pretty significant rates. So our model only really works, in a depressed tourist climate, which is why we're looking for a more sort of long-term solution here in Belize, and we're working on something which is going to be really exciting.
Okay, so help me better understand what you guys have done there at Umaya Village. I mean, is it the typical person that comes there to live or to visit? Is it a weekly stay? Is it more of a longer term solution for them? Trying to get a sense of who who your prospect is.
So we have a minimum stay limit of 21 days for a start. Okay. And the reason is, the investors in the hotel itself didn't want to undervalue the premium. So we offer discounted rate stays in return for long-term stay. So, your traditional hotel guest might need the room turned over, once a day, really quite power intensive. And what we do is we're marketing it to a demographic of people who are invested long term, which means we don't need as much room housekeeping. The guests don't need as high a staff ratio because they kind of get it after a while. They they can sort of show themselves around and know where to go. So we offer a reduced rate of accommodation in return for a long stay with a minimum stay of 21 days. The longest person we've had stay there is just over 3 months. Effectively what happens is it's such a convenient environment. People decide to stay around. I think someone said to me something was that they visit here for the experience, but then end up staying for the convenience. And I think that's very much true. When you're here, it's the barriers to renewing for another week are really simple. And then just to add, in terms of the actual experience on site when you arrive, so it's not your average real estate. In advance, you'll see one of our ads, or you might be referred. We then have a phone interview with you. We don't want malactors in our community. So we have a conversation with you. Are you the right person for our community? We're very open, but we expect you to be very open and respectful. You're going to be somewhere for 21 days. You don't, excuse my language, but you don't want to be a dick, right? You want people to
absolutely,
oh, that guy, when will he leave? So we interview them on the way, and just to make sure that they're looking to work, and they're not looking to they're not crazy, basically. And then when they arrive on site, we first night generally try and have dinner with them, just make them feel welcome, and try and get other people who are there to have dinner with us all. So it's like welcoming the new arrival.
Mm-hmm.
Then we have an orientation session. This is how you should be around your fellow guests. This is how you shouldn't be. This is where the local shops are. This is when we do trips. This is when we do so on and so forth. And then actually everyone here we have on Slack, the messaging system, so that you have this community notice board where I can find out what's going on. I can message someone I met last night. We also get everyone to fill out their profile. So, say I met you the night before and I'm like, oh, I can't remember, was it Kieran? Was it Kevin? And I'm able to search the directory. I'll see a photo of you, click on you, and it'll be, real estate investor, podcast host. And so, I'm able to slowly get there. And then every day we send an announcement, and every week we send an event calendar. And then at the events, we try and encourage interaction. So I guess really just glue so much. I mean, there was a barbecue in New York the other day with 20 of our guests just hanging out. I say the other day it was slightly warmer. We've got people traveling around Europe together at the moment. Some were hanging out in Chicago a couple of weeks ago. So it really is, it just pulls people together, and then they travel onwards.
Very, very cool. And so outside the typical amenities that hotel offered before you stepped in, what additional things did you add? I mean, what expansive experience are you offering that wasn't already there and in place?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, number one, marketing, straight up.
Okay.
You have no customers, we can get you customers. That's the supply demand. And from a business point of view, we take the risk on the marketing. So the whole idea is, if you've got an empty asset, you need that asset to have a bit of shine. The asset itself had been closed after COVID, and before that, the management company was picking up from a previous management company that had a bit of a rough patch. So the resort was a lovely resort, lovely people, lovely staff. Everything about it was fine, but there'd just been quite a few bad TripAdvisor reviews. And we just came on, and immediately we got several 5-star reviews. People were willing to overlook capital. Sort of overlook certain things like, when I said we had a sort of test guest month, for the whole of that, we were supposed to have water in the pool. There's no water in the pool, but, being really active with the guests, we said, look, we're getting ready, it's not going to be perfect, but being able to sort of say, look, hey, we're here, we're able to mitigate against bad happenings. So, it's sort of like people, particularly in hospitality, people are very forgiving if they see that you're atoning, or at least listening to them and being heard.
Yes.
And one of the things about Slack is, if I'm a regular hotel guest and I'm going to be so angry, and I'm not going to walk down to the front desk. I'm not even going to call, where, I'm just going to expect them to know that I'm angry and treat you. Whereas in, this example, you can just Slack a message to us being like, hey, there's no towels here. What's going on? Or, hey, how are you getting on? Yeah, it's all right, but the Wi-Fi is a bit patchy. We'll get our tech guy to come and take a look. So we're really able to have that sort of more active engagement with guests that you wouldn't otherwise. And then we could do all sorts of stuff. Like, it's really cool actually. Like, hey guys, we're going to launch this new block, so we need some images, we need some content. Hey, we're going to do a pool party. We're launching a new site in January, and so we said to the guys, hey, look, we're going to have the biggest pool party. Do you want to come down? We're going to be taking some shots. We'll give you free booze and some food, and you get to help us launch a new venue, and we really appreciate your support. And they're like, free party? Yeah, of course. And so then we rock up, and then this other place that we'll be working with from in January onwards, as part of our expansion plan. They've been empty for like
and
24 months.
That's expansion in Belize, another resort in Belize.
Yes, yeah. And then all of a sudden, bam! Like there's this cool pool party. It's kind of somewhere between like sort of, someone said it's like summer camp for adults. It's sort of a bit. One of our values is that we work hard and we play hard, and we have all ages and all different groups. But when it's the weekend, when it's after work hours, and when margaritas are there, just handed to you by the pool, it becomes a very amenable environment, should we say?
No, that's fantastic. And so, let's talk about the scalability of this business model. Obviously, you got an expansion plan with another resort, but like, what's the bigger picture look like for this business model?
Yeah, really good. I mean, it's probably just to mention that we will be rebranding to the Noma Collective, and that will be going. Thank you very much. I appreciate the positive feedback. So as of next week, so I think it'll probably be sort of November 2nd or 3rd. So I'm not quite sure when this will air, but we will be rebranding to noma-collective.com. And that will kind of signal our future intent, but it's threefold. So first of all, as an operator, so partnering with more resorts here in Belize. Belize is a beautiful country. It has everything. It has beach, it has Caribbean sea, tropical paradise island, lush rainforest, lots of biodiversity. So there's still a lot of room in Belize. And then on top of that, there will be an operating, an operator play there. So we will be, operating more spaces. The second fold is trips. So we've got a loyal fan base, and they're all the way around the world, and they're the most amazing people. So we'll be looking at doing sort of what we're calling them additions, but specific trips for remote workers using other people's accommodation and having it as a complete experience. And then the third and final long play is purpose-built real estate, mainly because the economics of Belize really support construction in the long term.
So a ground-up build, an actual ground-up build resort.
Yes, very much so.
And where is that in the future? I mean, you shooting for the next 2 years, 3 years out? What's the game plan?
Yeah. I mean, it's the problem with the startup is, and being on the other side doing venture investing, someone presents you with a business plan, and they're like, oh, we're gonna build castles in the sky in year 3. But I would be confident if we hadn't started construction within sort of 21 months, I'd be surprised. It's
awesome.
It's kind of, I would say it's going to happen sooner rather than later, just because Belize is such a ripe climate for real estate investment.
Would the capital have to come from the outside the country? For a project such as that?
Yeah. So I mean, the thing about Belize is it's
their banking system's not fully developed, right?
Yeah. Exactly. The commercial real estate loans, so leverage is quite. So the good thing about Belize is that construction costs are low, and so and you have some great expertise here in the country. So construction costs are low. However, operating is always, I wouldn't say a challenge, but it's just because of the way that the country is. It's reasonably closed as a country, and so it's not like you can have the general manager from Four Seasons, Miami to you're not when you're looking for operators, you're not spoiled for choice, which means there are some great operators here already. So it's quite
Well, that's exciting, man. I'm excited for you. No, that's awesome. You. No. So for those that want to learn more, about your existing project and what you guys have planned for the future, is it going to be the same website? Go ahead and share the website. Where's the best place to get more info?
Yeah, so for a start, sort of noma-collective.com. So that's NOMA-collective.com. If you go to umayavillage.com, there'll be a redirect. So straight up. So first and foremost, please go check us out. On socials, we'll be Noma_collective. So Instagram's our primary channel. And then if you really want to know more, LinkedIn, you can find me, William Mercer, or I think it's William Mercer. I can send over the link as well. Feel free to reach out, connect, and if you want to chat, I'm always up for big picture discussions.
That's awesome. Well, Will, really excited to have you here, my friend. We made it happen, and appreciate you working with me to get this thing rescheduled, but it's been a lot of fun, really insightful, and wishing you all the best, my friend.
Brilliant. Thanks for having me, and yeah, look forward to chatting in the future.